You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hey, thanks so much for giving us all of the positive feedback about these interviews. I'm so glad you are enjoying them. I just want to state the obvious, though, before we get started today. Loving someone that struggles with addiction can sometimes make our home life unsafe. And some of the women that have come forward are all of them are incredibly brave, but some of them are actually in unsafe situations, and their anonymity is really important. So they're conducting these interviews outside of their home, and the recording quality is not always going to be great. I'm not asking anyone to come to a studio or invest in anything expensive. We're just using old-fashioned phones. So thank you so much for understanding if you hear cars in the background or it's less than ideal. I think the important thing is that we recognize these incredibly brave women for coming forward and being willing to share because their hearts and intention is to help. And I think that's incredibly admirable, and I know you do too. Thank you so much for agreeing to share your story with me. I am incredibly grateful. Okay, so how did you meet your husband, and when did you know there was maybe a problem?
Okay, so funny story is we met at a dance club. So it was back when I was drinking a lot and going out and partying. He was drinking a lot, going out and partying. So we were just at that age and time in our life where that's what everyone did. So we were out at a nightclub and I saw a guy that I grew up with, and I'm like, oh, who's your friend with you? Because my husband was great looking, and he ended up introducing me to him, and we danced and had a great time. We went out a few times after that, always drinking involved, and it didn't really quite work out. We kind of went our separate ways. But then probably about 2 years later, I ran into him again at another bar. And so we started talking again, going on dates, always drinking involved. We both came from families that drank a lot, partied a lot, so it was just what people did, and so that's what we did. So fast forward, we ended up getting pregnant before we were married, and he moved in with me. I actually had a son already at this point too, not with him. So he basically was my son's dad from the get-go. Like, he loves him like it was his son. My husband is just like you talk about, a great, great guy that just struggles with addiction. So he's this great man, this great man that just loved my son just like he was his own. We had our second child and ended up getting married after that. And I would say it was probably when our second child was about 2, so we had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. He's still going out, still going partying. And I try to keep up with him, but again, I'm a young mom with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. It was kind of getting old to me, and we started going to church, and it just really didn't sit well with me, the amount of partying we were doing, trying to raise children, trying to go to church. It just, something didn't feel right about it. So I kind of quit going out and partying. And he did for a little while, and he always kind of has. He'll stop, he'll go months and months without drinking, without even touching drinks at all. And then, it's a holiday or a party or whatever, and he goes right back down the rabbit hole or whatever you'd call it, binge. So I think I noticed, the further I steered away from it, the clearer I saw how out of hand his drinking was. So, it'd be like, okay, it's the end of the night. Let's go home. Let's, go take care of our kids. And he's like drinking and drinking and drinking until he passes out. And I'm like, this isn't right. So that's kind of where I started realizing it, I think, is the further I got away from it, the more I recognized there's definitely a problem.
Let me ask you a question about the in-between periods where he wouldn't drink. What was the instigator for him not drinking in between those times?
That's a good question. So a lot of times it's different. Usually it's because another person is involved. He's great at making everyone think he's okay. And so, I see him all day, every day. So I can see when things are not okay. But he's kind of gotten used to that. And sometimes doing what alcoholics do, like blaming me, like it's my problem, I think he has a problem, so it's my problem, But when other people see it, like, for instance, the most recent time, like he's not drinking right now, and the most recent time it was because his best friend started seeing the way things are and seeing that he does have a problem and is calling him out on it. So I would like to say, he's learning his lesson when he stops, and I think there is some truth to that. But I think when I'm being honest with myself, it's mostly that he's wanting to make sure people see him in a certain light, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But again, I do think, he knows that I think you mentioned in one of your podcasts that an alcoholic said, you don't have to tell me how to feel about myself. I already feel bad enough about myself. And that's so true. He already feels bad enough about himself that, he does recognize that the alcohol only makes him feel worse. So there is some awareness to his stopping, but for the most part, I think it's when other people are involved.
So would it be fair to say, and this might not be fair, that he says what he thinks people want to hear and he does what he thinks people want him to do long enough so they kind of leave him alone, so then he goes back into the pattern?
Absolutely, yes. And he even knows that he's aware that he does that, on a day-to-day basis. He struggles with, people-pleasing. So, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting because I used to run a codependency group for women, and there was a codependency group for men that were struggling with addiction too, and that always amazed me how those traits can kind of go hand in hand. So, but also it is a coping mechanism, I think, to kind of get people off their back a little bit by telling them what they want to hear so they can then repeat the pattern. How did you do in between those periods? How were you feeling? And were you heartbroken or devastated when you saw him going back to drinking, or?
So that's all changed a lot since I've been working your program, and I've been going to counseling and attending Al-Anons and stuff. So when on the in-between times, it's so strange. It's I don't know, PTSD almost. It's I forget there was ever even a problem. And when I think about that, when he, like, relapses, so to speak, I'm, like, beating myself up, like, man, why was I so stupid to trust him and think that this was going to be it this time? And so a lot of that's changed. I mean, I do, like, again, right now we're in the period, the season of him not drinking. So it's like I am forgetting that things were ever as bad as they've been. But I'm also able to remind myself, like, okay, you know, the holidays are coming up. I hate the holidays, like many of us do. I hate them so much. And I want to love them because I have, you know, a bazillion kids like you do. But I just hate them. And I even told him on the 4th of July, I hate the holidays because of you. And so there's a part of me that's been able to separate, like, this has nothing to do with me. So even if he does relapse, like, I have boundaries set in place now. I have the ability to recognize this is his problem, not mine. I just feel like I'm in a stronger place mentally to be able to handle that if it comes. And it's happened so many times at this point where it's like, I think if it happens again, I'm going to have to take a really good look at, like, okay, is this it? Because we've kind of gotten to that point where it's gotten so bad that I'm like, because he's started promising our kids he'd quit. So in doing that's a big deal to me. You know, I'm a big girl. I can pull my pants, or whatever you say, pull my britches up if it happens.
Pull your pants down. That's awesome. I got
sound right.
Totally.
So, you know, I can get back up and I can deal with it. But, you know, with my kids, I don't, first of all, I don't want them to see him in that light. But again, it's his own doing. So if you're going to say it to my kids and not mean it, then it's like, I need to stand up for them. So I'm kind of in the place where I'm realizing that now.
Can you talk more about that? Because I think that is incredible. I love where you're going with this, because I felt the same way. It was like, you can mess with me all you want, but you cannot mess with my baby. When it came to my kids, that's actually was for me, the reason why I left. So can you unpack that a little bit more? Like, when he promises this, what do your kids say? How do they react? Do you have any conversations with them about that?
Over the last year, we have been, because my older two are teenagers now. So it's like they're seeing it for what it is. And I can't ignore it because, like, they're going to be faced with the opportunity to drink if they haven't already. And they're going to be, like, I wanted them to know, for one, this is not the way alcohol should be handled, ever. For two, like, you deserve more respect than that. I didn't want them to think this is how a husband should treat a wife either. And didn't want them to think that I'm just, like, taking it laying down or whatever. I'm really bad at saying.
I love it. You got that. That's perfect. I love it.
It's like the Brady Bunch movie Dad, where it's like a comedy and he keeps making the sayings wrong. That's me. So anyways, he, at this point, he's promising my kids, and so it's like, I have to talk them through it, like, and let them know he might not keep his word, you know, and so we need to talk through what that feels like. And also, I thought it was really important to let them know, that's what I'm saying, not to take it lying, I'm not taking it lying down. I'm going to counseling. I'm going to Al-Anon. I'm doing your programs. Like, I've never been in a better place in my life. So I wanted them to know that, like, and I told them, you know, I can stay or I can go. Because they were kind of at the point where they were like, why are you staying? And I was, you know, appreciative of them being able to share that with me. But, you know, I told them either way sucks. You know, like both choices suck. So I need to just educate myself as much as I can to make the best decision for our family.
Can you talk to me about what about leaving? I mean, I feel like I can answer that, but I really want to hear your words. What about leaving feels like it will suck to you? What are you most afraid of?
Well, so the first thing that comes to mind is we have two little ones, like, you know, elementary age kids that are like not old enough to understand what's going on. When I put them to bed at night, even if he's gone at like a meeting for work, they're like, I want daddy, you know, and he's, you know, the authoritative one, he's the, like, the fun one oftentimes too. He's just a really all-around great guy, and so that part's scary, just for my kids' sake, not having that part of their life anymore, you know. And then also, I mean, up until I did your program, leaving was just never an option. Like, it never even crossed my mind. I think just having a religious background, a religious upbringing, and, you know, that's not what you do. But even through counseling, my counselor is a Christian counselor, and she's like, you know, he's not holding his part of the marriage covenant. It's like there's another woman, you know. So hearing her say that and just kind of taking a step back and realizing I'm almost idolizing my marriage at the end of the day if I'm like, no, I'm sticking with this no matter what.
Wait, I'm so sorry. I didn't hear that last part. And I really think you're touching on a subject that's going to be so helpful for other women to hear. What do you mean by idolizing your marriage? What does that mean? Like, for those people that aren't familiar with, like, the biblical language or church.
Yeah, so, I mean, I've been in, sorry, that's a long word. I've been in the church for most of my adult life as a parent, and it's like divorce is not an option. But at the same time, you know, God says, you shall have no other gods before me. And here I am spending my days, my nights, every moment of my awakening time, like just mulling over my marriage and how can I make it work? How can I, you know, what if I just cook a nice, good home-cooked meal every night? What if I, you know, help him get all the help he needs? What if I've literally quit my job thinking that's what I needed to do to take care of him. And it's like, so I'm putting my marriage on this pedestal, like it's what defines me. Like it's bigger than God. You know, I'm spending more time thinking about my marriage than I am learning about God. And it's like, what am I doing here? This is, my marriage does not make me who I am. God does. So, yeah, that's been a very big learning moment for me over this past year.
Is there anything else when you think about leaving that gives you hesitation or fear? I heard you say your kids, that he's a very involved, good dad. and that they really enjoy him. Is there anything else when you think about your future and leaving?
Honestly, because we've kind of got, it's like every time he kind of relapses, it's like we get a little closer to being like, okay, this is it, we're done. And the most recent time it was like, he's like, yeah, I think you should talk to an attorney. I'm going to do the same. And I'm like, whoa, okay, here we go. And all I could think about was, I know I'm going to be okay. I don't know if he's going to be okay, which is like so codependent. And like, yeah, like I was talking to his best friend that I mentioned earlier, kind of has called him out and seen where he's at. And I'm like, can you talk to him? Like, just to see if he's okay? Cause like I knew he wasn't sharing any of this with anybody, what we were going through, like that we were at that point. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like he's gonna go off the deep end, you know? And instead of worrying about me, I'm like worrying about him. So I think that's another hesitation where I'm just like, I don't think mentally he'll be able to survive something like that. But I've grown enough to know, like, he's a big boy. He's got to figure it out if it gets to that. But yeah. I tend to fall back to that where I'm just like, oh, I hope he's reaching out to someone because, man.
Well, it sounds like you just said it. You said, I quit my job to take care of him. So you've made him your new job. Like, this is your full time. You work overtime, like, with no pay, to take care of him. And so I think this is wonderful that you're recognizing that, you know, one of the hesitations is you would have to quit your job if you left. And that feels very uncomfortable because it's you would feel probably, I'm assuming, a sense of a lack of control, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's flip the coin though. So have you thought about the benefits of leaving, what the positives would be?
Yes. So like one thing that just sticks in my mind so much is like, again, I want to love the holidays. Like, I just imagine like what the holidays would be like, not worrying about him passing out or like staying too long at the party we're at and making a fool of himself or just being obnoxious around the kids. And so I just imagine like good, cozy holidays, you know, and vacations. I love vacation, but we can't even go on a quick trip to a cabin without alcohol being involved, you know, like it's sad. So just imagining like that freedom to do what we want when we want without alcohol having to be in the equation. And if it is in the equation with other people, like it doesn't affect us, you know. We can leave or stay, but we don't have to go home with it.
Has we touched on this at the beginning a little bit, but how has alcoholism affected your drinking? And has this kind of turn of events in your life made you reflect on your childhood and see that differently? Because you said you grew up with a lot of drinking in your home.
Yeah. Yeah, the Al-Anon has been really helpful for me to uncover my like behavior patterns that started early on because alcoholism's always been in my family, and it was always in my husband's family too. So we both have very codependent tendencies, and like we're the ones that of the family that always wants to make sure everyone's okay, and you know, the peacemakers, which doesn't help ourselves at all, like our own marriage at all. But yeah, my drinking, it's like because of his, I've had to grow up. I've had to be the one that pays the bills. I've had to be the one that gets the kids to bed and makes sure they did their homework and, you know, do all the responsible things where years ago, if alcoholism wasn't in my marriage, I probably wouldn't be the person I am, as responsible and, you know, being the grown-up in most situations, like, if I hadn't gone through this.
Yeah, isn't it interesting to look back over several years of your life, and I think when you're starting or in the middle of your healing, you can start to see how addiction can be super helpful. Like it can be, even though it's so badly harming the person that you love. Have you felt like through this healing, like, is there any part of you that feels grateful for the experience or feels like it was your opportunity, like you said, to grow into this person that you were meant to be?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, before we were even married, I mean, I was the messy, unorganized, just like party girl. I smoked, I drank, I was just wild and like didn't really care about whose feelings I hurt. I was just kind of a train wreck. Like it was pretty inevitable, like it was going to either be him or me. By the way our lifestyles were. But like through this, I feel like God just like, you know, whether it was me being pregnant and not being able to drink or just like, you know, I always had to be the designated driver. Like it wasn't even, I know like some of my friends where they both drink, they're like, okay, how about you drink at this party and I'll drink at the next one. You know, like they have some sort of agreement. So, like that's not even a conversation in our house. I mean, and there'd be times where I'd get a drink at a holiday party and I look over and he's on his third and I'm like, well, I guess I won't be having this. So it really helped me to grow up, and just in particular though this year, I'm so grateful for like God just revealing to me all the ways I play into it, like through your program, through Al-Anon, through counseling, through having a good, dependable friend I can talk to that shares my beliefs, where she knows the whole story. So through all of that, I've been able to like see, you know, the nagging, the where you say like, don't count the bottles, don't mark the bottles, don't go looking for them. Like that has been huge to me. And I think the most recent thing I just stopped is like when we were going through the period where he told me to get a lawyer, he removed like the track your location thing on our iPhones from his phone. And so I was like, fine, I'll remove mine. And up until then, and even after that, like we have an iPad that links to his text messages and emails and everything. I'm like constantly checking to see who he's telling what. And and so that's why I kind of knew like, oh my gosh, he's not reaching out to anybody. So like I was constantly like checking who he's texting, who he's emailing. And it's like just this weird place you find yourself in where it's like, I just want to be right and know, like, I want you to know you're wrong. And it's kind of sick. And like, that's where I was. And up until just recently. So it's like, I think in Al-Anon, they say something like the need to always be right is like something you struggle with in this disease. And yeah, like I don't, it's so freeing to not be worrying about that. And just, like I said, like, seeing where I play into it. Because it's like, how helpful is it to be, like, I know you're lying to my face. Like, he's not going to all of a sudden change if I say that to him. You know? So it's like, what am I actually doing here? Like, I saw your text message. So, yeah, that's been, I would not be this person I'm becoming if I hadn't gone down to my, you know, bottom, rock bottom.
Your rock bottom. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they call this a family disease, right? Because we have rock bottoms too, for sure.
Right. Yeah.
And they're so different for everybody, but we all have been there, and so many good things can come out of that rock bottom if we can survive it, you know?
Right.
So
yeah.
I'm really, really proud of you. I think first of all, you are so courageous for sharing this. So thank you. And I am so proud of the new patterns that you're forming and your self-discipline that only comes through determination that you have and that I can hear in your voice for wanting to heal yourself. I think it's really inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, even during this call, this was like so out of character for me, but like when Lori posted it, I'm like, yeah, I got to do that.
I love that you did that.
And even when I would get nervous, like since I signed up to do it, I'm like, no, this was, your program has made me and shaped me in a way that like nothing has this past year. It's been like just the stuff you share. It's like, oh, so that's not normal, you know? It's like, oh, not so everybody does it. Like, you know, not. You know, I thought everyone checks how many bottles their husband drinks.
Yeah, it's weird how unnormal becomes our normal. And we just get numbed out to it. We just become used to this weird kind of existence where we're doing behaviors that other very healthy couples don't do. But you don't know that because you're so addicted and consumed with your relationship. You kind of have blinders on to everything else a little bit, and you hang on to those hopeful feelings of when you think like you were saying, like if I could just get him to admit out loud, then clearly he's going to get it, how bad this is, and want to change, you know?
Right.
But there's so much more, and I love that you are surrounding yourself with as many tools as possible. That's incredible. I know that you are seeing a therapist that specializes in addiction, and that's really wise, and I am so proud of you for setting aside that time, especially with little ones, to make that a priority for yourself on a regular basis.
Really good. Yeah.
Is there anything else that you think that we need to cover that you want to share that I didn't ask you?
I mean, I will mention another good tool that's helped me that might be helpful for others.
Please.
So initially I was just consumed with your podcast. Like I just went from the very first one and I would play it nonstop. I know. So that's why I'm like, I'm your number one fan.
That was a long time ago, so that's awesome.
So yeah, I started with that, and then I also, every day I would get outside no matter how cold it was and go for a walk, and I would listen to an awareness exercise. So kind of like, you know, the grounding idea of like just listening to the sounds around you, see how it feels. Like, there's like science behind how that heals trauma from what I read.
Really? Okay, I have never heard of this. Can you go into more detail, please? What is this? What is the
Yeah.
grounding? I mean, I know what grounding is, but what does this look like? What does this sound like?
So it's called the Wheel of Awareness is the particular one I use.
Is it an app?
It's on a website. It's from a podcast called The Place We Find Ourselves.
Yes,
and
I've heard of this. Okay, great.
Oh, it's amazing. But he talks about just like the makeup of our brains and how trauma actually makes disconnections happen in your brain, like the neurology of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And this exercise can actually heal the trauma they found. I haven't done like a ton of research on it, so this is just one person speaking to me. And so yeah, it's like I think an 18-minute exercise, so I'd go on an 18-minute walk and you just sit with how you're feeling, like what you hear, what you feel, like your clothing, think of how your clothing's touching your body right now, how that feels. Think of, what are you smelling? What are you tasting? Going through all the senses like that. And then he goes into like what thoughts come to your mind right now. Just sit with that. He talks about like, is it fleeing or is it like pulsing? I don't know. It's just really cool it helps me a lot.
That is terrific. Okay, tell me one more time, just because I know I don't want people to have to rewind. So the wheel of
awareness? Yeah. The
awareness.
Wheel of Awareness.
Okay. The Wheel of Awareness, and the guy that introduced you is from the podcast The Place We Find Ourselves?
Yeah, so he has a place on his website where you can just play the recording where he walks you through all those.
Yeah.
And so I just always keep it up on my phone, not on a browser, and I just made myself do it every day. And I think too, one of the books you recommend on sleep I just finished.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that has helped me so much too, just recognizing how important sleep is. It's insane. Everybody knows it's important, but it's no, it's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I when someone asked me what is your sleep hygiene? I was like, what? What is that? I mean, I'm very into hygiene. You will ask my husband, I'm like, he's 9 years older than me, and I'm like, I love you, and we are not growing old together and getting crusty. We will practice self-care. But I've never known about hygiene, sleep hygiene, and I'm like, anything that has to do with hygiene, I'm into. So, but it's true, and so I think there's a lot of science behind that. That's really exciting.
Yeah,
that's great.
That's been good for me too.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing these tips. I love this stuff. I love when we all share what works for us.
Yeah, me too.
And thank you for being so brave and sharing with me your personal story. I am so grateful, and I know you're going to help a lot of people. I know a lot of people are probably nodding their heads and going, me too, me too. So thank you for doing this. Thank you for fighting through that anxiety about giving me a call today. I know it's terrifying, but I'm really proud of you.
Yeah, this is good. And I'm still oh my gosh, I'm talking to Michelle.
Well, I love talking with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with my personal thoughts and beliefs. We are bonded together by the fact that we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.